God, sorry.
So, he's listening to his Slim
We're live.
Whitman.
We're live, Charlie.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't want to play the ads. Hopefully, the ad will be over.
Eliza Jane, oh Eliza, Eliza Jane, oh Eliza, Eliza Jane. I got a friend in Chicago, Eliza Jane, walking field her cold winds blow, Eliza Jane, oh Eliza, Eliza Jane, oh Eliza, Eliza Jane. I'll tell you once, I'll tell you twice, Eliza Jane. Enjoy yourself and live your life, Eliza Jane. Oh, Eliza, 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 Eliza Jane. I wandered today to the hill, Maggie, to watch the scene below. The creek and the old rusty mill, Maggie, where we sat in the long, long ago. The green grove is gone from the hill, Maggie, where once the daisy sprung. The old rusty mill is still, Maggie, since you and I were young. I wandered today to the hill, Maggie, to watch the scene. simply take your favorite and then you flavor it with just a note or two of new harmony. Tell the orchestra to play staccato, then you jazz a little on legato. Now you're ready to is a ragged tune.
Listening to the lovely sound of Ashley and Simpson. And this is my gradual fade out so we can start this party. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Tuesday Tech Talk is where you have landed. Farm Virtual Connections Tuesday Tech Talk. We have been doing these now for over a year, and it has been such a important part of our lives, and I think so many of you as well. And thank you for showing up week after week. We are super excited about today's Tech Talk. I mean, my goodness, who doesn't want to know about getting money from somewhere, from somebody, from some big corporation, even if it's only fractions of pennies. But what the heck? They add up, don't they? Anyways, before we get started, just making sure those of you who are here for the first time or maybe don't come that often know how we run this show. So Farm Virtual Connections is our way of staying connected with you. We present a speaker on a specific topic who will share what they know, and they're usually a member of our community, not from some big company trying to sell you something. And so then we open up for questions in the second half. And the way you can ask your questions is by using the raise hand feature. Not doing this because I probably won't see you, but use in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says reactions on the far right. And if you click on that, you'll see a big bar at the bottom of that says raise hand. Now, if you have not updated Zoom in a bazillion years or months or whatever, then you'll probably find that little blue hand in the participant window. And similarly, you will find the participant window be able to launch that in the bottom of your screen. If you don't know where that is, then you might want to enjoy looking at all the names of the people who are here. You can also just put your question in the chat, and I will ask it for you if you prefer. So we always love it when our participants engage. We like to see your faces. Joel Simpson. Hi, bud. I'm going to bring you on the screen. So I like to look at people when I introduce them. Joel Simpson. Oh, my gosh. Well, first of all, this guy's been around with Virtual Connections. He's been at pretty much every peer group session we've had. And it turns out every time he shows up at a peer group session, we find out how much more he knows. This man is a wealth of knowledge. He is a musician, a producer, a singer, songwriter. He's got his own recording studio. He is like one of the smartest people I know, and also one of the nicest. He's also part of a team, Ashley and Simpson, and the two of them together have been running the Two-Way Street Coffee House in this virtual world. So again, such a generous guy with his info, and today he's going to share what he knows about getting paid from the PROs and various other people that pay you for your songs being played. Joel, I cannot wait to hear what you have to say, and I have a list of questions a mile long, so let's get to it. Please, everybody, welcome Joel Simpson.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Farm, for having me. Just first off, I want you to know I'm not an expert, but or not like a lawyer or anything like that. I studied music business in college, and it's just something that I'm passionate about. I'm one of those geeks that reads about copyrights and performance royalties and mechanical royalties, and then go chase people like Ethan Beard down to see what he thinks, on the NERFA side of things. So I do appreciate everybody tuning in and chiming in. So if you haven't been dialed into what's going on in the music industry as related to performance rights organizations and mechanical licenses and all that, there was something called the Music Modernization Act that was passed in 2018. And with that, a group was created, or a collective was created, called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. And so that's why a lot of folks are talking about this sort of thing lately. And the Mechanical Licensing Collective is a collecting organization in the United States that is, abiding by this new Music Modernization Act. So they're the collecting organization for digital distribution rights for mechanical royalties. So that's why it's been like on topic, in everybody's mind. It actually went into effect January 1st this year, so it's just started. It's going to be something similar to like what your performance rights organization is, but it's going to collect the mechanical royalties as a publisher or a songwriter for you. So that's one of the things I'll talk about today. But just in general, I have some sheets that Annie will pass around later, or give you a link to. And in those materials, one of the things that I was talking about was just there's different information like what mechanical royalties are from the song perspective, some lists of organizations for international collecting of your song rights. But one of the things that I find most often when I talk to people who are like in our position as far as writing songs, maybe self-administering your songs as a publisher, or even owning your own sound recordings and needing to collect, your mechanical royalties for those. So a lot of folks just seem like kind of confused about it all. And just a couple of things that I could give you as far as advice would be to say, if you are self-administering your own songs or your own sound recordings, to double check that your information's correct with all of your organizations that you might associate with. So like, for instance, I'm with ASCAP. And so just going in and, making sure that your online account is up to date, that you have your, your email, your address, your bank information correct and up to date. And then also checking any past songs that you think should be registered with them to make sure that they've been properly registered and accepted. Write down your IPI number. So if you are going to log into this performance rights organization, write down your writer or publisher number to have on hand. I would also write down the work numbers that your PRO assigns you. So they're called work IDs. So like say, for instance, with ASCAP, if I go look at songs that are registered under my name or my publisher, there's a number that they assign to it. Those are all really handy things to have. If you've distributed music, so this would be now from the sound recording side of things. If you've distributed music on say like CD Baby or TuneCore or something like that, you should go there and double check that you have, first of all, that your account there is up to date, including your address information in your bank account, but also see if there's any other features that have been added. So I was working with somebody who released an album in 2009 with CD Baby, and he was realizing on the spot that there were stores he could have added himself to if he had just checked in sooner, because they had added more streaming services to what they offer as far as distribution. So he was able to add himself to other streaming services that he didn't know he could, but just by logging in, he could. When you're in your distributor account, I would definitely recommend writing down the UPC and the ISRC, or the International Standard Recording Code, that they assign it, if you don't assign those yourself in-house. And then the other thing in this list is, what Annie will share with you, is just like a standard checklist. If you're about to release a song as a publisher or songwriter, some good ideas of what you might do, but also if you own the sound recording, some good ideas to do. So for instance, if you wrote the song, to be able to copyright it is like, step one. And some people keep asking, are you able to do block copywriting? And you can still do it that way. It says it right on the front of the copyright website. So for example, you might copyright the whole album. Some will argue legalities of whether that individual song is copyrighted or not, but really, if the whole project is copywritten and you've listed it, all those individual songs as part of that release will be copywritten. I would register with your performance rights organization before you release the song, and I would include, the songwriting information from your song split or split sheet. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then register with your collecting agency as a songwriter or a publisher. So in that case, that would be the Mechanical Licensing Collective, or one of the organizations collecting mechanical royalties on behalf of the publisher. I would also gather as much metadata as you can. So then that's again talking about like the ISRC, the UPC for the album, the unique song IDs from your performance rights organization. I would also document the songwriters and the splits as far as who wrote what percentages of what part of the song. And then I would also document any known recordings of your song. So there was a folk artist I was working with who had a song that many artists had covered. So to be able to document how many times it was released and what years it was and who owned those sound recordings was helpful to that person to be able to try to maximize collecting the money from their PRO. A couple of things that some songwriters that I'm finding that maybe haven't entered the digital world yet fully, haven't considered would be to take an old title, and if it's already distributed, to maybe upgrade it to have your distributor include the publishing aspect to it. Maybe take that old title and make sure that it's registered with something like the Mechanical Licensing Collective, so you're getting your your performance, your publisher's mechanical royalties from that. Another thing is a consideration might be, do you want to self-administer, or do you want to hire a company that does that for you, where they administer your publishing rights for you and collect for you? There's obviously a fee involved with that and a percentage of what they collect, but they're more likely to be able to go after international publishing and international collection agencies to collect money for you on your behalf. So some of the artists I work with are, kind of big in England too, or whatever. So they might want that side covered for them to get those additional royalties. So for an example is, if you have your song registered with a performance rights organization, say like ASCAP, you are collecting performance royalties as a publisher, but you're not collecting the mechanical royalties as a publisher. So if you've signed up with CD Baby, for instance, on their standard publishing deal, you would not be collecting the publisher side of those mechanical royalties. And that's where something like Mechanical Licensing Collective and Sound Exchange and some of those other companies come in, where they collect for you on your behalf. So far, Annie, how am I doing? Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry. I'm just making my pen is moving furiously.
And if I'm talking too much, or too fast, just let me know.
No, I mean, it's kind of like, part of me wants to stop you every time you use an acronym, but I think a lot of but I sort of know what the acronyms mean, and I don't know if this audience is all full of people that already know what like an IPI number is, or a like PRO, performance rights organizations, or like the UPC obviously is your little barcode right on your computer, and then the ISRC code. That was something that was new to me after I had already released 4 records. I didn't know what that ISRC code was, I think because of digital stuff. So anyway,
and your distributor can offer those to you. Most of the distributors can offer it to you for kind of a low price. Jennifer and I, we run that Randomosity Records and a publishing company as well. And we actually decided to go ahead and get our own company ID for that.
Yeah.
And I think it was about $50. So if you've paid, $2 for an IRC number or ISRC number per song on an album, you're already up to, half the price to just get it as a company. And so we now have an index where we just have our front numbers, our identifier as a company, and then we add whatever numbers we want for our internal, cataloging. So we did that with UPC as well, so that we could become, we have our companies designated a UPC, and we don't have to buy those from a third party.
Right.
But if you're not into that, you can get them very inexpensively, and you don't even have to get them from your distributor. There's companies that just offer them for like $2 a pop.
Right.
So that's pretty fun. So let's see. Thank you for that, Annie, because I needed some prompting. But you know what? I'm going to share that graphic we were talking about earlier. This comes from the Mechanical Licensing Collective. I spoke to them about using this, and they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. But this is a really beautiful chart. Can everybody see this okay? Awesome. So we're talking about the left side there is about musical works, or like the song specifically, and the right side is about your sound recordings. So if you go down column 1 there, it says performance rights, performance royalties. That's where ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, global rights, collectors will come in for you for collecting your performance royalties. That's really just like performance on radio and things like that are public performances of your piece. Sorry, I got to move something here. And you can see at the bottom there where it says it's split, publisher share and writer share. So the publisher is responsible for collecting that money and then distributing it to the writer in this instance. So, or your PRO will distribute it to you if that's how you have it. So the second column here, reproduction and distribution rights, mechanical royalties, that's where the Mechanical Licensing Collective comes in, and other things like, if you've had your music added to a downloading service where, like, for instance, I put some of my stuff up at Bandcamp and you can download it there. Let's see, oops, I went too far there. And then you can see underneath there where it says mechanical shares, under the MLC there, it says music publishers, administrators, or self-administered songwriters. Mechanical Licensing Collective, by the way, will let you register as a songwriter. It doesn't matter if you're a publisher or not. That's something that's kind of cool and different, I think, because it makes it more accessible to anybody. And then the voluntary part, those are places where you're going to have to double check that you're collecting there, and your distributor might not necessarily collect for you in that regard, on that one. But then if you look to the right side, we're talking about sound recordings, and this would be where, if you have a sound recording out there and somebody's using it or wanting to use it, that's where those rights come in and where your ownership is. So if you look at the bottom of that left column there, it says like record labels or self-released artists and artists and producers. That's showing you, who would collect in that instance. And then the far right is digital performance rights, where it talks about sound exchange and collecting the performance rights for the performance royalties for the sound recording as a record company, so to speak, or the owner of the sound recording. And let's see, owners of musical work. Yeah. So this will be in the list of documents that Annie will share with you later. And this first document that I'm showing you is really a slide presentation from the Mechanical Licensing Collective. They have all sorts of videos and set webinars. In fact, they had one today. And did I stop sharing yet? Here it is. All right. And so definitely worth attending some of those. So for instance, ASCAP's been having them, CD Baby's been having them, Mechanical Licensing Collective. Folk Alliance had a really great one at the beginning of the year where they had the president of ASCAP and the president of BMG Publishing, and they went through how to license and be prepared to be licensed for live streaming. So another part that I'm finding that, so I don't know, that's one part of the whole big picture thing. What do you want me to keep going with this, Annie? Or like, I was going to talk a little bit about how it comes into play when we're doing live streams, because I feel like that's been a lot of the questions out there by folks.
I'm actually going to jump in if you don't mind, because there's like, right now I'm at a point where I have some questions and I want to, and who knows, this might just be me and everybody else already knows this, but I'm going to just do some anticipating. So you and I talked about this when we were first conversing, and there's the mechanical royalties thing for me, like versus the performance royalties thing. Again, a new thing for my brain to wrap around that I think, I don't know, maybe I'm not alone, or maybe I am alone in understanding how much money I'm not getting because I haven't registered properly. And so just nuts and bolts. A radio station plays my song. Who's paying me?
Performance royalties and your performance rights organization.
Okay. That's not okay, Spotify spins. Who's paying?
Spotify's paying you mechanical royalties and performance royalties.
But Spotify, but if Spotify got if I'm distributed by CD Baby.
CD Baby is going to collect for you.
And that's mechanical.
That is mechanical. but
That's not performance.
it's only for the sound recording. So if you haven't done a publishing deal with CD Baby, no one's collecting your publisher's mechanical share.
Okay. Okay. So we also talked about the fact that I actually registered with Sound Exchange, but we think that Sound Exchange is ignoring me because I am distributed by CD Baby and they're actually paying me.
That's if you did the publishing deal. So like the two deals you can do with CD Baby, for instance, is a standard deal and a pro publishing deal.
Yep.
So the standard deal would be just the mechanical from the sound recording perspective.
Okay.
The publishing is collecting the mechanical for you as a songwriter or a publisher.
Yeah. I'm still a little confused with the difference. I mean, I understand the performance versus the mechanical theoretically, but the fact that, so when I look at my BMI account online, I see 200% to me because I'm registered. I'm doing both artist or songwriter and publisher, right?
Yes.
Is it a similar sort of thing with Sound Exchange or with CD Baby if you go with the pro thing, like you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, for instance, if you didn't do a publishing deal with one of those titles, you could register as a publisher or a songwriter with, say, like the Mechanical Licensing Collective and collect your mechanical royalties from the publishing side through one of those organizations.
Yeah.
And they're gonna collect from all of the streaming services in the United States and anybody that uses music on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really curious to know the level of understanding on all this, and if I'm the only one who's confused by it, I will stop taking up your time.
Is there a poll? Is there like a poll?
But no, I'm not. Like there is, I guess I can't really do a poll, but everybody can raise their hand. But because the other, like I said, I bought my own ISRC code, so I'm using them. But I just found out that I was doing it wrong. But it shouldn't make any difference because I'm still, the numbers assigned. It's not really accurate because I wasn't changing the year. But right? So, but anyway, I don't know if we want to dip into all that right now. So,
so I did want to go over. Can you guys see this one?
Yep.
In this folder, by the way, there are.
I'm going to share with everybody. I just didn't want to distract them while you were talking.
Is that you see it still or no? Like
yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Yep.
There's the copyright reports at the top. The copyright report was a study put together by the Congress in preparation of doing the Music Modernization Act. So in my humble opinion, I would say the politicians got it right in the sense that they created this mechanical licensing collective and made industry pay for it and not the creators. So the people who actually profit from it, like Spotify and YouTube, they're funding with the mechanical licensing collective, which is opposite of, say, like the performance rights organizations, where the creators of music, by paying your initiation fee and then a percentage of the royalties that they collect for you, those ones are paid for by the creators. So that was kind of a cool thing. They also dealt with the fact that music is used in so many new ways now. And specifically, it's only really streaming, and that physical media is, for the most part, on the way out or just kind of a fringe thing. I put in a couple of template letter of direction because I'm finding that some folks don't realize that they can send CD Baby a letter of direction to say, hey, I gave so-and-so, like say one of the folk DJs that does a online stream thing, that I gave that person permission to use this song in his show. Like, say Charlie does one of his shows and he wants to put it on YouTube. You can whitelist him, or you can, send a letter of direction to your distributor and anyone that collects for you to let them know that you've made this arrangement and don't take it down and, don't flag it as a copyright claim, that sort of thing. So I have a document here. I hope you guys can see it. Tell me if it's coming up here.
It's good.
This is just something I wrote or kind of just took notes on. I started wondering, because I heard so many people talking about licensing and what permissions you might need to to rebroadcast and broadcast. And this really started from watching the Folk Alliance one, where they had, some really high level folks from the industry talking about it. So they were just a couple of things, like a rebroadcast is a previously recorded show. That's that's something that's interesting, because a lot of folks out there, like Two-Way Street, for instance, we record our shows live, but then we have them out there as rebroadcasts. So we have to treat them differently in that regard. Getting licenses, you might get PPL licenses, which is a public performance license, or a sync license, depending on what kind of music you're using. So if say you're having the artist come up and sing on their own, you might get the PPL license. If you're having somebody, if you're playing a pre-recorded song, like say I had Charlie on my show and I wanted to play one of his CDs, I would have to get a sync license to put it to a video in that instance. And then you can also inform different streaming services or social media platforms with a letter of direction of your show and what's going on. So if you're doing a special show and you want to try to get, special permission to do a Johnny Cash special, you would go to the publisher, get your licensing, but then go back to that, wherever that platform is that you're going to stream it, and say to them, hey, I got all this information, so please don't flag us, please don't take us down, that sort of thing. Let's see. There's a little bit in there about the PPL for you guys. There's a great article in here about PPLs, but a couple of things that I wrote in here just for fun was things that I've learned this new or affirmed in the last year with on operating under the musical guidelines, or the guidelines of the Music Modernization Act. That's hard to say. But anyway, one of the things is user generated content falls under the platform's licenses for the live stream. So that means that if you create something that's original, so like you're using a copyrighted song, but it's not a pre-recorded sound recording, that it's automatically covered by the license of that media platform. So for instance, when the 2A Street puts out a show and somebody covers their own song or someone else's song, those will be covered by their platform as their blanket license, or from their blanket license. Like we put it out on Facebook and YouTube. So both of those are covered by their licenses that they purchase for the first time. It's also
Wait. Stop. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The 2A Streets licenses?
No.
The Facebook licenses. Yes.
Platform.
Okay.
So
Great.
the social media, or like YouTube or Facebook, they're required, and they have an agreement under this new Modernization Act to buy a blanket license for the content that their users create. So that's kind of a misnomer. People don't realize that. Another thing is first time broadcasts fall under the ephemeral. I can't even say it. Annie, help me out.
Ephemeral.
I never say that word. Ephemeral. That's
ephemeral.
I never say that one right. And that comes back from the use in live broadcasts. So like, for instance, that's why oftentimes radio isn't treated the same as, say, a social media platform, or like YouTube or something like that. Another fun thing that I affirmed was the whole 95-year period of the until public domain. So that means anything from 1925 is fair game. Last year, kind of fun because there's some great music out there. When getting sync licenses, that was another thing that I learned or kind of re-upped on, was to do that whole whitelisting thing by sending the letter of direction. If you can get an arrangement with or an agreement with a publisher that you're getting the license from, to be able to add your channel to their publishing whitelist. And then a couple other things that were interesting things that I heard that came up were, are the musicians union, and is there, should you give remuneration for the broadcast? And then, and the thing that I learned there was that really that's up to the venue and the artist, and, the contract should specify that. And I realized this was an older version of what I was supposed to put up. This was my working version, and it's not finished, but it's good enough there. But
yeah,
all right, so
the finished one is up there. Yeah.
Right.
You have some questions if you're ready for it. I don't want to interrupt.
I am. Yeah.
You're
Oh,
on
good.
the
We
roll,
already. I was worried I wouldn't be able to talk for long enough. I'm sorry. So
Oh.
I'll shut my mouth.
I would have stopped you. You're doing great. I mean, it's a beefy subject, right? So it's like, it seems like there's so many parts to it, but it's probably more complicated than I personally am making it. But Diane Perry's had her hand up for quite a while. She's being very patient. Diane, what is your question? Oh, sorry. You have to unmute yourself. My job. My bad.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to unmute there.
There you go.
Okay, so I have two main questions. The first one has to do with, you had a flow chart up of 1, public performance rights, 2, reproduction and distribution rights, 3, et cetera, et cetera. Under 2, you listed the MLC blanket license, and then voluntary, and they were side by side. And so I wanted you to explain to me, does that mean that it is an either or does that mean that it is a both, that you should protect yourself with both? And then just before you answer that, I'll ask my other question, which is related related to what you were saying more recently, which is when you said, hang on, let me just get that up here. I have it. Okay, when you said, okay,
She's holding me
that
to it.
public performance, when you said that the ephemeral
Clause.
use, like it kind of made me think that YouTube is like the radio station. Oh, sorry, hold on just a second for the phone. You said that it made me think that YouTube was broadcasting you like a radio station, but then you seem to say that it wasn't like a broadcast from a radio. So I was wondering that first time live one. So I was just wondering if you could explain the difference between those two also. Thank you.
So between radio and YouTube?
Between
like,
that first time use, like if a radio station has a blanket license and ASCAP goes through what they broadcast and figures out who they have to pay to whom, but they take it out of that blanket license. So it sounded like you were saying that YouTube has a blanket license and Facebook has a blanket license.
That's correct.
But then you were saying it only applies to the first ephemeral live broadcast. So I was wondering, what is the difference between what the radio stations have and what Facebook and other platforms have? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
The first about the distribution, and you'll be able to see that graphic again when Annie shares that folder. I would do both. So I would do something like the Mechanical License Collective to sign up your songs or musical works, and then there are things that mechanical licensing doesn't collect for, and that's what that second column's for. So different things, like I said, Bandcamp doesn't participate, in the same way that, say, Spotify participates in collecting royalties and distributing royalties. So when you do that, that's a secondary line that you can collect for, but it's different from the Mechanical Licensing Collective that only collects for certain things. In fact, if you scroll down a little bit on that, Annie,
there is a thing what we're talking about, though, right? This one right here. Okay.
Yep. And then there is, I think there's a section right there that says what they will collect and what they, like the new blanket license. I think it's one more screen or two.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So this is what they're saying they'll collect for and what they don't collect for. So that's why you would want to go for those other, make sure that you're still registered as a publisher with, like, Harry Fox, for instance, if you're selling CDs and that sort of thing. And like XM radio, if your stuff's up there, they wouldn't collect for that the same as they would, like, mechanical licensing collects for interactive streaming, that sort of thing. The second question about the use, it's pretty much the same. YouTube is required to buy a blanket license. And then once they've bought that license, it's covering user generated content for the first use. The second time that you put it on, or when you rebroadcast it, that's when you have to consider getting licenses. And that's what activates the mechanisms of you as the content creator having to get those licenses. So in the example of the two-way street, and Jen's probably uncomfortable when you're talking about this so much, we get copyright claims for all of our stuff. And to me, that some people freak out and think, oh my gosh, that's a violation, they're going to cancel my account. It's not a violation, it's a claim. The publishers are coming in and saying, this song, we represent this song and we want to collect the royalties for it. So they have the choice to shut down your video, to mute it, or to allow it and collect for it. So we haven't had anybody shut us down. We haven't had anybody mute us. It's been, almost everyone has been collected. And to me, that's acknowledging that the mechanisms are actually working, so that the mechanical license is actually going through and collecting the songs from all the publishers. And I'm even talking about folk singers that are self-published. So, but sometimes that's raised issues for some folks. Like I saw a post by John Flynn the other day that he was concerned that, like, BMG or something publishing was collecting for a song that he didn't think they had the rights to. So he was trying to get to the bottom of that to figure out, what was going on there. Or another artist I was talking to thought that he had ads on the top of his YouTube video, and was wondering, like, wait, who's getting the money for that? Which is a totally separate entity in all of itself. So when we're talking about a video on YouTube and you perform it, so for instance, when you release it through CD Baby, they'll put your song on every song from your album on YouTube, and they'll put your album cover on there. The reason they do that is because YouTube pays them, or one of the highest paying, and so they're just trying to collect more money for you. And to put that up there is to, have it out there, have it distributed for you, and being able to collect that money, which is more than, say, like what you might get for a play on Spotify. So they're doing you a favor, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
then,
and let me interrupt you there, because that was something that I learned after, and I can't remember if it was you who told me, but somebody told me this, because I was like, wait a minute, I got a copyright claim on a live performance of a song of mine that was on an album, because CD Baby was paying out a royalty on, of course, the album version that they had posted, right? So CD Baby's distributing mine. So, and then I posted just a live version of that song, and that live version got a copyright claim.
right.
So does that mean CD Baby is also collecting for every time somebody listens to the live version, right?
Yes. It
Okay.
does. Yeah.
So
But
can
that's
you identify?
separate
Yeah.
from monetizing a video, by the
Right.
way.
No. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And in
but
fact, you don't even have to get into that.
I won't. But people think like, well, how do I put ads on my video and how do I collect that money? That's like a totally different animal, and that's not really that's more of dealing with your channel than dealing with your songs. But okay, sorry, I'll stop there.
No. But my point was that I challenged that claim before I knew what was going on. I'm like, why is CD Baby saying that? And so basically I shot myself in the foot, because now I'm not getting paid for that necessarily, unless, so that's, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that's something else I have to sort out. But understanding that's why that claim was there in the first place, is because they're representing me.
And
Right.
yeah, definitely. And Two-Way Street in particular, we're nonprofit. So like everywhere we can, we say, this is nonprofit. We're not trying to collect money. We're not trying to monetize.
Oh, okay.
Everywhere that we can, so that as a venue, we hopefully will, not get shut down by anybody. And that in consideration of the fact that we're not trying to monetize the videos, they'll let it fly. So a paid venue might have different issues with that sort of thing.
Yep. Can you go? Okay, so we're going to go back to the ephemeral thing, because I do have a kind of I think we have a real life example
Case?
of this case
Is
with
this
this.
Sue Fink?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And what's cool about it is that the rebroadcast, right? So I
Is
think
Sue here?
maybe no, she's not. She couldn't
Oh,
be
bummer.
here, so I don't think
Okay.
she'll mind sharing
Okay.
it. But
All right.
I was listening to This American Life a couple weeks back, and it was a rerun of a show that they had done about alternate universes. And Sue Fink wrote a song called My Alternate Universe. And at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, that's Sue Fink's song. And so, of course, I called her up, and I was like one of many people that's like, hey, I just heard your song. Well, it turns out, so she chased, and I'll fast forward, and I'm not going to try and fill in all the blanks, but the ephemeral clause is the first time they used that song, they didn't have to pay her anything for it. It was just a live in the moment thing. But when they rebroadcast it, that's when it was really smart for her to chase that money down, because she got some bucks for that, right? I hope
Yes.
okay that I said that, right? I see you, Jennifer. I'm so happy you're nodding your head. Feel free to chime in anytime, honey.
She's a big fan of Sue Fink. That's why.
Well, who isn't? Like, come on. And that was great. So I think, is that the crux of the ephemeral thing? Is there another example of that you can?
And radio is distinctly different than putting a video out on social media.
Okay.
So there's two different animals there. And right, I'm surprised, did they not contact her ahead of time or contact her publisher? Did
No,
you
they
ever hear?
didn't. And in fact, when
No.
she called them, she did get an
Apology or-
apology, and
Okay.
I think they stepped
Because
up.
the music director for the show should have done that, right? Should have like crossed their T's and dotted their I's and all that. So something must have fell through the cracks there.
Yeah, Diane's saying she's pretty sure she gets paid the first time, but actually, there are people that are using it. And I have a very, we've talked also about my friend David Barrett, who wrote One Shining Moment, which is this, anthem that's used at basketball. So, most folkies don't know the song, but he spends his life chasing down uses of that song because people use it all the time. And Jon Stewart used it in a blip and he chased it down. So there apparently is some higher level people that will go after your monies for you for
Well,
that kind of licensing or usage.
if you feel like this is overwhelming to you, you can hire a service to do it for you.
Sure.
And I would believe that David would probably do that.
Well, of course, and he did.
Yeah,
But
and like, or just on a regular basis, because it's like, 15% of your royalties slashes the time it takes you to understand it and try to get through to those people, and every individual organization that you'd have to get through to
Right.
would be near impossible. I went to a music business conference a few years ago and heard a man talk who was buying up old publishing companies and then going after those royalties. And he
Mm.
claimed that he had as many as $200,000 worth of royalties from one of the companies that he had bought
Mm.
because he had found songs that royalties were sitting around. I believe that something like that would be possible, but I also know that some of the performance rights organizations only hold your money for a limited time. So if they can't find you after 3 years or so, some of these organizations, because they have to operate as nonprofit, they have to do something with that money and end up giving it to like people like Kanye, the top producers,
Yeah, right.
in the
Yeah.
industry. And so your money's, buying Kanye his next ranch in Wyoming,
Don't start
know.
that.
But then I look at something like there's this song called the Duck Song. Anybody know that Duck Song? It's a
No.
silly song. It's a cartoon, and it's about a duck going up to a lemonade stand and asking the guy that's selling lemonade if he's got any glue. Yeah, I know it sounds really ridiculous, but if I go to YouTube real quick and I just search up that song, I'm just going to hit the official one and an example of like how much money this dude made. Let's see, the Duck Song. Sorry, I should have had this prepped. And it's worth watching because it's hilarious. But the original one has 482 million views, and he released it 12 years ago. So if he monetized that properly, that's a lot of dough that he made from that song. Aside from that, there's probably about 100,000 videos that use it. Every one of those videos uses that song, and he gets a cut of that, the person that wrote that song. Another example, and I know we don't like to talk about her a whole lot, but Taylor Swift.
Love Taylor.
I love too, and she just
awesome.
re-released her new albums, and that's I'm a secret Taylor Swift fan. But anyway, if you look at her videos, every one of her songs from every one of her albums, hundreds of millions of views, and then all the teenage girls sitting in their bedroom trying to do a cover of it and doing their best version of a Taylor song, she gets cut from that too. So there's literally hundreds of thousands of users creating hundreds of thousands of videos based on her song. So it's just boom, boom, boom. It just goes up. Another thing I did one time, I gave a talk to my kids junior high about music biz, and I decided I would work out how much, to my guesstimate, Ed Sheeran earned in 2018 from his music. I came up with $500 million, and he was the top grossing act of that time, but he also had like crazy amount of sync licenses and uses of his songs in the Olympics and in the in all sorts of uses where he just time after time did a deal after deal. And I mean, that's $500 million from one artist in 1 year.
It's ridiculous.
Wow,
Okay. So this kind of maybe hopefully bounces off nicely with Patty and Craig's question, which, to your point about people, their question is, does the platform license cover archived shows that include music from other artists?
It doesn't. Not archived, not technically.
So we do a live stream, and I don't know if I interrupted you as you were talking more about how we're getting paid for the live streams, but we do a live stream show, and in that live stream show, I cover a CCR song, right? That song, it's okay that I'm covering it. I'm not getting paid for it, but the only way I'm going to get paid for my songs is if I submit a playlist, or is somebody covering me on that?
I've seen
How
both
you can
happen.
submit a live BMI Live or ISCAP, they have like performance.
I've seen both happen.
Okay.
So like I've seen artists that perform their own material and it gets claimed by their publisher. But those are probably the artists that are registered with, their performance rights organization, have their stuff up to date,
Mm.
have some kind of
What are you trying to say,
collection,
Joel?
trying to collect their
Are you
mechanical
looking
side
at
too.
me?
Now, well, like an example that I did, like about maybe 6 years ago, I updated my ASCAP online profile for my publisher and my songwriting. They found songs that I forgot and put them into my catalog and started collecting for me. So I had co-wrote some songs with somebody that released them a bunch of years ago and put them, and they were big hits on iHeartRadio or whatever. It's kind of more poppy stuff, and I totally forgot about them. Like, didn't even remember that I did a deal on them, and then they all showed up and they started collecting money for it. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'll take it. But that was only as a songwriter because I didn't have the publishing on it. But
Okay, so your answer to Patty and Craig's question was no. Does the
I
platform license cover archive shows that include music from other artists? And the answer is no.
technically not the
So,
archived ones, but you'll probably find that the media platform will let them fly, and you'll probably find that the publishers will claim them.
what constitutes an archive show? Like
Something
anything
that's
that's
not a
up there
live
for.
broadcast. Yeah, like that's not a live, like not going live. Yeah. So if you recorded a live show and then rebroadcast it, or once the
Oh,
live stream is over and it shows up as a video on your page or on your
gotcha.
YouTube channel, that would be a
Archive.
rebroadcast.
So it's archive basically the after the show's done. The next time somebody listens, they're listening to an archive show.
And in
Right.
my experience, it's been when it's on a platform, I usually don't get flagged for it. If you
Mhm.
put it on a website, that's when you get flagged for it,
Oh, interesting. If you embed it,
like
or,
on your own website, right?
huh? Okay. Michael and Nell have a question. I have more. I told you I have a lot of
How's
questions.
it going in Nashville?
Hey, you guys, hang on. Go ahead and unmute.
Okay, I'm trying. Hey, Joel, good to see you, man.
You too.
I've got two like real basic questions. We're going to get off the sexy platform talk and all that. First question is about UPC code, little bar thing. Does that have any other purpose that other than the retailer being able to scan it and then put it up on his cash register?
In digital world, it's used the same way. So that's how they identify your works and how to pay the people that they need to pay or who owns it.
Okay, so that's something that's embedded in the CD.
It's embedded in the digital file that they distribute.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
The other thing is metadata.
Yes.
Could you explain that and what its function is and what exactly items are considered metadata and what needs to be there for radio play and what doesn't need to be there? Because
That's a
I'm
good point.
completely confused about the whole thing.
In the folder that Annie's going to share with you, I'm going to share. There's a really neat, detailed um, metadata checklist or format from the Music Business Association. It's something that they put together to try to get people that are publishers and record companies to kind of have a uniform standard to metadata. Metadata in general really is just identifying features that you can include on your songs. So for instance, you can get a tag editor probably for $5 or less that you can drop your files into, and you can edit all the tags, you can add artwork, and then you can save it as that. The reason I recommend doing those sorts of things is particularly for folk DJs. A lot of them like that. They want to be able to identify your song instantly. Like, so I think of Artie Martello, my buddy out in New York. He said, I won't use it if it doesn't have metadata on it, because he'll download it and put it on a big hard drive for himself. But then if he's looking for the Ashley and Simpson song he's looking for, he's got to be able to type it in and get that list. If you don't have your metadata there, he won't be able to search you that same way. So if you add your metadata, there's all sorts of searchable things. Oh, I could look up Randomosity. I could look up Joel Simpson. I could look up Ashley and Simpson. I could look up Joel Matthew Publishing. I could, one of our album titles, one of our song titles. Any of those features all of a sudden become accessible to him as a search. But that's also the logarithms, these mysterious AIs, that operate from, say, like, Facebook or YouTube. and Spotify and all the streaming services, they're looking for how many titles are associated with your name. The more titles you have out, the higher you're going to get up in the rankings, because you're coming up more often in their AI and their logarithms, that sort of thing. So one thing that I've noticed, there's this kind of unspoken benefit to doing what I'm saying to do as far as registering your works, and that is because of the logarithms and because of the platforms recognizing you more as like a player in the pond. So the benefits of that to me outweigh the like drag that maybe your title will only get $50 a year, or something, or $100 a year when you release it. So the fact that maybe our rankings are getting higher, as artists, from our record company up in like iTunes or Amazon Music or Spotify, to me is because I'm in there, I'm registering with everybody, they're all talking to each other, all their AIs are talking to each other, all their databases are conferring with each other. That's how they found those songs that I totally forgot about, for me, and listed those as for a songwriter, or me as a songwriter. I'm sorry, I'm babbling too much. I love this stuff too much.
Cool. It's cool. I would interrupt you if it was I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
Michael and Nell, did you get your question answered? Or?
So
one more point. I just recently recorded and had produced a CD, a short run, just 100 copies. And my question is, if that didn't get embedded in the system when it was produced, is there a way of getting that on there post production?
yes.
Is that
Yeah.
something? So what I think I'm understanding is that that's not information that's embedded in the physical CD. It's something that's out there in the digital ether.
It can be, but if it's not, you can have it assigned. Yeah, and there's a unique code to the manufacturer. What the manufacturer put out. They added a code to your CDs when they put them out. So when you put it into a computer, it's going to go look for it on the databases, and if it can't find it, you can add it after the fact, and it'll just associate it with that number that was assigned to what the manufacturer put on it.
Okay. And we have IRC.
Grace Notes is a good one for that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Grace Notes, and Brianna is asking, everybody says update your metadata, but where and how? Does this document that you've got in here kind of cover all that? It's looking pretty robust.
It is. It's a pretty thorough document, and it covers more things than we'll need as folk singers. But there's different ways you can do it. Like if you've distributed your music through a distributor already, they've assigned metadata to it based on the form that you filled out as you were completing your release. So as you're going through, they're saying, "Hey, who's the songwriter? What's the title? Who owns it?" And then they assign metadata to it based on the information that you put in. But for instance, when Jen and I release something, we try to usually give it in advance to media, and we'll create our own files with our own metadata so that we can control what it says and when it's released, and also make sure that we're hopefully appeasing the folk DJs that we're trying to appeal to.
Yeah. Isn't that all sort of, there's part of that that's happening in the when you're mastering. So I sat with my mastering engineer and we entered a whole bunch of that metadata, but sometimes they do that and then the manufacturer, like depending on the level of quality of the manufacturer, sometimes that isn't translated. So you get your disc back and you stick it in and it says track 1, track 2. But then I've been told that all I really have to do, although it's a pain in the butt, is take one of those manufactured CDs and drop it into iTunes and enter all that data in iTunes and then say submit to Grace Notes, and voila, magically all the other CDs have this data. Is that
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Okay.
Because so in that instance that you described, it sounds like your mastering producer was using a feature in his audio program that allows to record the metadata. So a lot of audio programs allow you to do that if that's one way that you want to add that data. But what I'm finding is that not everything's universal. So and then unless you communicated that to the manufacturer, like, hey, look out for this metadata, and maybe even sent them just a text file of it, they might not have known that it was there. and then they might have just generically put track 1, track 2, and their company code to it. And then when you go to do grace notes, it goes back to that company code that was assigned to it by the manufacturer, duplicator, replicator, whoever you went to, and then that would be assigned to that number now. Like that, whatever number was on those CDs, that new data would be assigned to it.
Okay. Yeah. Ooh.
I know it's like, and it's so hard.
You do a whole tech talk on metadata.
Yeah.
Good.
ISRC codes.
Oh yeah, there's another one. Well, that's not. I mean, if I can figure that one out, Michael, seriously, anybody.
So
can.
there's companies that sell them for about $2 a pop for
Yeah,
per
I got
song.
them on my because somebody told me to get them, so I got them.
Yeah, and then that's one of the metadata pieces, right? And that's a nice one because it's the international standard. So if you're getting airplay in other countries, you are more likely to be able to collect those royalties because of that number that you've assigned to it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Joel, I am either you've just kind of blown everybody's mind, or given them all the information they will ever need, or they're waiting for
Well,
waiting for me to drop that link in there so they can go examine all the info. But this was really, really, really great.
if anybody has any questions and wants to reach out, I feel like I know pretty much everybody in this room. So please do. It's okay. Like, and I don't know if I'll have time for you, but I'll try. No, I'm kidding. I'll put you in line. No, I will help you as best I can. And I don't know everything. And I love the challenge of, like, I had an artist who was dealing with an album that he released in 93 or something. It was released by a record company. The owner of the record company had died, and the record company then became defunct. But he was able to go to the estate of the family and secure rights to that sound recording, and plans to re-release it. But he's struggling with, like, how do I copyright it? How do I re-release it? And this was a title that had never been digitally released yet. So it was kind of a fun challenge to start working on that with him and see if we can't do it. But
So
wow, thanks for all the
What
links.
you're gonna say? No, you're gonna call up and just Joel's got a whole new side business,
Yeah.
consulting now. So we just, it's awesome, really. I just want to tell everybody that I posted links in the chat. One of them is to the main band that I know about, Ashley and Simpson, is Joel's music with Jennifer Ashley, the lovely Jennifer Ashley, and then Randomosity is your record label, and then also the link to the resources. I would imagine in one way or another you can reach Joel through either one of those websites. And I honestly, I can't wait to go dig into all this info. This has been really, really, really great. And this is your last chance, people, to ask any more questions while I am saying we are going to continue doing our weekly Tuesday Tech Talks for the next 3 weeks. And then starting in June, we're going to be cutting in half. We're going to be splitting just 2 times a month now. We're going to slow down over the summer. And we're not going to let anybody in after 3 o'clock, except this guy.
Sorry.
But we these are all live streamed. You can go back out there and rewatch them on YouTube and Facebook, and we will also ultimately link them to our website, so they'll be embedded there. So I don't know what kind of royalties you're getting for this out here with this live streaming here, bud. But I feel like I have a million other questions, but our time is up for today. So maybe we'll have you back for a round 2 after everybody's had a chance to, examine this. I think this is an ongoing conversation. So
That sounds like fun.
yeah, don't you? I mean, just a big old Q&A. We'll be doing this yasing. That sounds
Or even a work
his
party.
face, it's not-
Where, like where we have a Zoom and people actually do their work and we talk about it while they're
yeah,
doing it,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think so too. Okay. All right, that's it. Sorry. Come find us at farmvirtualconnections.org. You guys are awesome. We're so happy that you're here, Joel. Thank you a ton
You're welcome.
for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. You are always wonderful to have around. And I'm going to move us into gallery view for the live stream world. So if you want to mute your video, now's the time, because you're going to get blasted. Just a real quick. But otherwise, we love it if you release your faces and wave and show your hands and wave out to the universe while I, okay.